Lost in space with a warrior. Princess who thinks I'm her pet. Send help. The crash. The emergency beacon's dying wail was the last thing I heard before my transport, the Meridian's Edge, became an expensive collection of scrap metal scattered across the crimson sands of Zerion Prime. I dragged myself from the wreckage tasting copper and ozone, my diplomatic credentials now as useful as confetti in a hurricane. By the 7 moons, a melodic but commanding voice rang out across the crash site. What manner of creature have the stars delivered? I looked up through blurred vision to see her, Princess Kalitha Vexnar of the Drakmori Empire, though I wouldn't learn her full title until much later. She stood 8 feet tall, her obsidian skin marked with intricate silver tattoos that seemed to pulse with their own inner light. Forearms moved with liquid grace, 2 reaching for weapons that could probably vaporize a small moon, while the other 2 gestured in what I hoped was curiosity rather than hunger. Her eyes, 6 of them arranged in perfect symmetry, studied me with the intensity of a scientist examining a particularly interesting specimen. Each orb glowed with a different color, amber, emerald, sapphire, creating a kaleidoscope effect that was both beautiful and terrifying. "It's injured," she murmured, approaching with cautious steps. Her voice carried the musical quality of wind, chimes mixed with the authority of someone accustomed to absolute obedience. How curious. It appears almost sentient. Almost sentient? I tried to speak, but only managed a pained groan that apparently confirmed her assessment of my intelligence level. "Fear not, small one," Princess Kalitha crooned, her lower arms reaching toward me. "You have been found by Kalitha Vexnar, first daughter of the Crimson Throne, conqueror of the Spiral Nebula, and keeper of the Sacred Flame. I shall tend to your wounds." Before I could protest, she scooped me up with surprising gentleness. Her touch was warm, almost fever-hot, and her skin had a texture like polished stone. I found myself cradled against her armored chest, feeling simultaneously protected and utterly helpless. "Such odd coloring," she mused, examining my pale human skin with fascination. "And only 2 arms. How do you accomplish anything meaningful? Your species must be remarkably inefficient." I managed to croak out, "I'm human. From Earth." She paused, tilting her elegant head. "It makes sounds, how delightful. You must be quite intelligent for a lower life form." She stroked my hair with one of her upper hands. "I shall call you Pip. Yes, that suits you perfectly." Pip? I wanted to explain that I was Ambassador Marcus Thorne, that I'd been en route to establish first contact with the Drakmori Empire, that I had 3 degrees in xenolinguistics and had successfully negotiated 17 separate peace treaties across the galaxy. Instead, I wheezed and probably looked like exactly the kind of creature someone would name Pip. "Come, Pip, Princess," Kalitha said, carrying me toward a magnificent ship that rose from the desert like a crystalline mountain. "We shall return to my vessel, the Shadowbane. I have many questions about your species, and I suspect you will make a most entertaining companion." The ship's interior was a marvel of organic architecture, all flowing curves and surfaces that seemed to breathe with life. Bioluminescent panels provided soft illumination, while maintenance creatures, things that looked like a cross between jellyfish and mechanical spiders, tended to various systems. "Zephyra," the princess called out, and a crew member appeared, another Drakmori but smaller, with only 4 eyes and skin that shifted between blue and purple. "Prepare quarters for my new pet. Ensure it has proper bedding and what do lower species consume? Processed nutrients?" "I can eat regular food," I managed to say, though it came out more like a whisper. "Such spirit." Princess Kalitha laughed, a sound like silver bells mixed with distant thunder. "Already it attempts to communicate its needs. Remarkable adaptation for such a primitive species." As she carried me deeper into the ship, I realized my diplomatic mission had taken an unexpected turn. Instead of negotiating treaties, I was apparently about to become the galaxy's most overqualified pet. The royal treatment. 3 days into my involuntary pethood aboard the Shadowbane, I'd learned several disturbing facts about my situation. First, Princess Kalitha was genuinely trying to take good care of me, which somehow made everything worse. Second, her crew consisted of battle-hardened warriors who'd conquered 17 star systems, but were now intensely interested in my eating habits. Third, escape was impossible when your owner could bench press a shuttle. Pip appears distressed again, observed Commander Vorthak, the ship's tactical officer. His scarred face bore the marks of countless battles, but he watched me with the concern of a veterinarian. Perhaps it requires more stimulation. I was sitting in what Princess Kalitha had proudly called my habitat, a luxurious suite that would have impressed Earth's finest hotels, complete with climate control, entertainment systems, and a selection of foods from dozens of worlds. The only problem was the force field keeping me inside and the fact that everyone kept referring to me in the third person. Stimulation, I muttered, poking at something that resembled blue pudding but tasted like chicken. I need to contact my government before they think I'm dead and start a war. Such animated vocalizations. Princess Kalitha entered with her characteristic grace, her silver tattoos brightening at the sight of me. My research suggests your species requires mental engagement. I've brought puzzles. She produced a collection of geometric objects that would have challenged a theoretical physicist. When I solved the first one in 30 seconds, her eyes widened with delight. Extraordinary. Zephyra, document this. The creature demonstrates problem-solving abilities beyond initial assessment. I have a name, I said firmly, standing up despite the dizzying height difference. Marcus Thorne. I'm an ambassador from the Terran Federation. Princess Kalitha's upper arms clapped together in obvious pleasure. It's learned to mimic speech patterns. The progression is remarkable, though Marcus Thorne sounds more like throat-clearing than proper nomenclature. Pip suits you much better. Lieutenant Zendar, the ship's communications officer, leaned forward with interest. Her bioluminescent patches flickered rapidly, a sign of excitement I'd learned to recognize. Princess, should we attempt to trace its origins? The crash site yielded interesting technological debris. Excellent initiative, the princess replied, settling into a chair that molded itself to accommodate her impressive frame. But first, I wish to observe more of Pip's cognitive abilities. The way it manipulates those puzzles suggests a fascinating neural architecture. Over the next few hours, I was subjected to a battery of tests that would have made a xenobiologist weep with joy. Pattern recognition, mathematical reasoning, even artistic interpretation, all while being discussed like a particularly clever dolphin. The creature shows remarkable adaptability, Commander Vorthak noted, reviewing the results. Its problem-solving speed actually exceeds our baseline expectations for sentient species. Yet it lacks the physical advantages of proper evolution, Princess Kalitha mused, gently stroking my hair with one of her lower hands. The gesture was meant to be comforting but felt patronizing. Only 2 arms, fragile bone structure, limited sensory organs. Your species must rely heavily on tool use and cooperation. We've built a civilization spanning multiple star systems, I said, trying to inject some dignity into my voice. We've mastered faster-than-light travel, artificial intelligence, and quantum manipulation. Such complex vocalizations, she exclaimed. The tonal variations are almost musical. I wonder if it's attempting to sing. Zephyra's skin shifted to a curious orange hue. Princess, the debris analysis is complete. The technology appears to be sophisticated, more advanced than our initial estimates. Princess Kalitha's expression grew thoughtful. Intriguing. Perhaps Pip's species is more developed than appearances suggest. This could explain its remarkable intelligence. Could explain my what now? I demanded, but she was already lost in thought. Double the security protocols, she ordered. If there are more of Pip's kind searching for it, we must be prepared. And increase the habitat's enrichment programs. If it truly is from an advanced species, it will require more complex stimulation. As the crew dispersed to carry out her orders, Princess Kalitha remained behind, studying me with those mesmerizing 6 eyes. You fascinate me, little Pip, she said softly. Such intelligence trapped in such a delicate form. Do not worry, I will protect you from those who might not appreciate your unique qualities. The sincerity in her voice was almost worse than being treated like a mindless animal. She genuinely cared about my welfare, which made explaining my actual situation infinitely more complicated. Cultural exchange. Today we begin advanced behavioral studies, Princess Kalitha announced, entering my habitat with what I'd learned to recognize as her scientific curiosity expression. Her tattoos pulsed with an excited silver glow, and all 6 eyes were focused on me with unsettling intensity. "Your Highness," I said, using the formal address I'd observed from her crew. "I really need to explain something important about my species." "Such persistence in vocalization," she mused, settling cross-legged on the floor to bring herself closer to my eye level, though she still towered over me. "Today's experiment will test your capacity for cultural learning. I shall teach you proper Drakmori etiquette." Before I could protest, she began a complex series of gestures involving all 4 arms, creating patterns that seemed to tell a story. The movements were hypnotically beautiful, like watching someone conduct an invisible orchestra while performing ballet. "This is the greeting of acknowledged equals," she explained. "Though naturally, you lack the proper number of appendages to perform it correctly. We shall adapt it to your limitations." "Limitations?" I bit back my irritation and tried to follow along, using both arms to approximate her movements. To my surprise, the patterns had an internal logic that reminded me of mathematical equations. "Fascinating," Princess Kalitha exclaimed as I managed a simplified version. "Your species demonstrates remarkable mimetic abilities. This suggests advanced social learning capabilities." Lieutenant Zendar entered, her patches flickering with what I'd learned indicated urgent news. "Princess, long-range sensors have detected several vessels approaching our position. The configuration suggests they're searching for something." "Search ships?" The princess's demeanor shifted subtly, her posture becoming more alert. "What type of vessels?" "Unknown design but highly advanced. Energy signatures suggest weapons capable of threatening even the Shadowbane." Princess Kalitha's gaze fixed on me with new intensity. "Pip's people," she murmured. "They've come looking for their missing, what would you call it, pack member? Offspring?" "Ambassador," I said clearly. "I'm an ambassador, and those are probably rescue ships from my government." "Such specific phonetic combinations," she noted, apparently interpreting my words as particularly sophisticated animal communication. "The stress patterns suggest urgency. Your species must have strong social bonds." Commander Vorthak's voice crackled through the comm system. "Princess, the approaching vessels are broadcasting in multiple languages. One of them, it appears to be similar to the creature's vocalizations." "Put it through," Princess Kalitha ordered, the bridge's speakers filled with a familiar voice. "This is Admiral Rebecca Sterling of the Terran Federation ship Prometheus. We're conducting a search and rescue operation for Ambassador Marcus Thorne. His transport was reported missing in this sector. We mean no harm and request only information about any survivors." My heart leaped. "That's Admiral Sterling. She's remarkable," Princess Kalitha interrupted, her eyes wide with wonder. "Your species uses electromagnetic communications, and the vocal patterns are indeed similar to yours, Pip. Your people have developed complex social structures." "They're not my people," I said desperately. "I am one of them. I'm Ambassador Marcus Thorne." For the first time since I'd been aboard the Shadowbane, Princess Kalitha paused and really looked at me. Her 6 eyes blinked in a cascading pattern I'd never seen before. "Princess," Zephyra said hesitantly, "the creature seems to recognize the communication. Its physiological responses suggest familiarity rather than mere species recognition." "Impossible," Princess Kalitha murmured, but I could hear doubt creeping into her voice. "Pip is clearly a non-sapient life form, albeit remarkably intelligent, but—" "Your Highness," I said, drawing myself up to my full height and using every bit of diplomatic training I possessed, "I am Ambassador Marcus Thorne of the Terran Federation. I was en route to establish formal diplomatic relations with the Drakmori Empire when my ship crashed. I am not a pet, not a specimen, and certainly not something called Pip." The silence that followed was deafening. Princess Kalitha's tattoos flickered through a rainbow of colors I'd never seen before, and her crew members exchanged glances that suggested they were rapidly reassessing everything they thought they knew. "If this is true," she said slowly, "then I have committed a grave error in protocol. You are saying you are what we would consider a person?" "Yes," I practically shouted. "A person, a diplomat, someone with a job, a family, and a government that's probably preparing for war because they think you captured me." Princess Kalitha's skin shifted to what I would later learn was the Drakmori equivalent of a deep blush. "Oh," she said in a very small voice. "Oh dear, diplomatic incident." The silence on the Shadowbane's bridge was so complete I could hear the ship's biosystems humming. Princess Kalitha stood frozen, her tattoos cycling through colors that probably indicated the galactic equivalent of mortal embarrassment. Her crew looked like they were calculating how many war crimes they'd accidentally committed. "So," I said, trying to inject some levity into the situation, "this is awkward. Admiral Sterling is requesting permission to board." Lieutenant Zendar reported, her voice carefully neutral. "She's asking specifically about Ambassador Thorne's whereabouts." Princess Kalitha turned to me with an expression I'd never seen before: complete uncertainty. For someone who'd conquered star systems, she looked remarkably lost. "Marcus, Ambassador Thorne, what should I tell them?" "The truth would be refreshing," I said, then immediately softened my tone. Her distress was genuine, and despite everything, she had tried to take care of me. "Look, no permanent harm was done. Cultural misunderstandings happen in first contact situations." "Cultural misunderstanding?" Commander Vorthak's voice cracked slightly. "We treated a foreign ambassador as a pet for 3 days. To be fair," I said, "I was pretty banged up from the crash, and your species' definition of obviously sentient apparently has higher standards than most." Princess Kalitha's lower arms wrung together nervously. "Your Admiral Sterling, she will be displeased?" "Oh, she'll be furious," I admitted. "But at the situation, not necessarily at you. Becky Sterling has been dealing with first contact protocols for 20 years. She's seen worse." "Becky?" Princess Kalitha's head tilted. "You use informal address for your military superior?" "We're old friends. She actually recommended me for this diplomatic mission." I paused, realizing something. "Your Highness, you mentioned earlier that you were expecting a diplomatic contact. Were you expecting me?" Her 6 eyes widened simultaneously. "The Terran ambassador was scheduled to arrive, by the sacred flame. I was preparing formal reception protocols when my sensors detected the crash. I assumed the ambassador died in the wreckage and you were simply an animal survivor." "Grant boarding permission," I advised. "Let me explain the situation to Admiral Sterling first. It'll go better coming from me." 20 minutes later, Admiral Rebecca Sterling materialized on the bridge in a column of blue light, flanked by 2 of her security officers. She was exactly as I remembered: silver-haired, sharp-eyed, and radiating the kind of authority that made entire star fleets snap to attention. Her gaze swept the bridge, took in the assembled Drakmori crew, and finally settled on me. "Marcus Thorne," she said in a voice that could cut steel. "You look like hell." "Hello, Becky. I can explain." "I hope so, because your emergency beacon went silent 3 days ago, and we've been expecting a diplomatic incident or worse." Her attention shifted to Princess Kalitha. "I assume you're our host?" Princess Kalitha drew herself up to her full impressive height and executed a formal bow that involved all 4 arms. "I am Princess Kalitha Vexnar, first daughter of the Crimson Throne. I must offer profound apologies to the Terran Federation." "For what exactly?" Admiral Sterling's tone was carefully neutral. "I may have accidentally treated your ambassador as a domesticated animal." The silence that followed was spectacular. One of Sterling's security officers made a choking sound. The Admiral's face went through several interesting expressions before settling on carefully controlled professionalism. "I see," she said finally. "Marcus, perhaps you could elaborate?" "Cultural misunderstanding," I explained quickly. "The princess found me in the wreckage, assumed I was a non-sentient survivor, and has been taking excellent care of me ever since." No harm done? Just a fascinating insight into different concepts of what constitutes obvious intelligence. Admiral, Sterling studied Princess Kalitha with the keen attention of someone evaluating a potential threat. Your Highness, am I to understand you were unaware of Ambassador Thorn's identity? Completely, Princess Kalitha replied, her skin shifting to what I'd learned was a color of sincerity. I believed him to be an exceptionally intelligent animal. His species' physical characteristics, they do not match our expectations for sapient life. Because he's small and has only 2 arms? Among other factors, yes. Admiral Sterling turned to me with a look that promised a very long debriefing session. Marcus, only you could turn a first contact diplomatic mission into an interspecies pet adoption. In my defense, I said, I was unconscious for the crucial first impression period. We must make amends, Princess Kalitha declared suddenly. The diplomatic protocols demand it. Ambassador Thorn must be granted full honors befitting his station, and the Terran Federation deserves compensation for this error. What did you have in mind? Admiral Sterling asked. Princess Kalitha's tattoos brightened with determination. A full state reception. The ambassador will be presented to the Imperial Court as the honored representative of the Terran Federation. We shall proceed with the original diplomatic mission as planned. After I've had a chance to debrief my ambassador and ensure he's medically cleared, Admiral Sterling said firmly. Of course, Princess Kalitha agreed. Then more quietly, Ambassador Thorn, Marcus, I am truly sorry for the misunderstanding. Looking at her genuine distress, I found myself smiling. Your Highness, this might actually be the most interesting first contact story in diplomatic history, and you did take excellent care of me. Even when you thought he was your pet, Admiral Sterling observed dryly. The best pet in the galaxy, I confirmed, which finally brought a smile to Princess Kalitha's exotic features. New beginnings. 6 months later, I stood on the observation deck of the Drakmori Imperial Palace, watching the twin suns of Zerion Prime paint the sky in shades of gold and crimson. The view never got old, though I'd seen it dozens of times during the ongoing diplomatic negotiations. Deep in thought, Ambassador? I turned to find Princess Kalitha approaching, her formal court regalia replaced by simpler traveling clothes. Even in casual attire, she moved with the fluid grace of a born warrior, her silver tattoos catching the fading light. Just appreciating the view, I said, and reflecting on how much has changed since our unconventional first meeting. She joined me at the railing, her forearms resting casually as she gazed out at the city below. The trade agreements are progressing well. Your Admiral Sterling drives a formidable bargain. Becky's good at her job. The mineral rights deal alone will revolutionize both our economies. I paused, studying her profile. Though I suspect that's not why you asked to meet privately. Princess Kalitha's skin shifted to a warm amber hue. What I'd learned indicated thoughtfulness mixed with affection. The negotiations will conclude soon. Your mission here will be complete. True, I'll be reassigned to a new diplomatic posting, probably somewhere less eventful. Less eventful than being mistaken for an exotic pet? I certainly hope so. We stood in comfortable silence, watching the city lights begin to twinkle as night approached. Over the months, our relationship had evolved from embarrassing misunderstanding to genuine friendship. Princess Kalitha had proven to be brilliant, compassionate, and surprisingly funny once you got past the whole conquering warrior princess facade. Marcus, she said finally, I have a confession. Oh? I knew you were sapient after the second day. I stared at her. What? Her tattoos flickered with what I'd come to recognize as mischief. The puzzle-solving abilities, the complex vocalizations, the way you structured your environment. It became obvious you possessed advanced intelligence, possibly superior to baseline Drakmori standards. Then why? I began, then stopped as understanding dawned. You were studying me. Studying human behavioral patterns in a controlled environment. she confirmed. I wanted to understand your species before formal negotiations began. I thought it would provide diplomatic advantages. You kept me as a pet for 3 days for research purposes? I also enjoyed your company, she admitted, her skin shifting to a deeper amber. Your species is fascinating, Marcus. You're individually fragile but collectively powerful, emotionally complex but capable of remarkable logical thinking, and you have the most expressive face I've ever encountered. So the whole not recognizing my intelligence thing was an act? Partially. I genuinely didn't expect such advancement from a species with your physical characteristics, but once I realized the truth, I may have prolonged the experiment. I should have been angry. Instead, I found myself laughing. Princess Kalitha Vexnar, first daughter of the Crimson Throne, conqueror of the Spiral Nebula, and apparently, xenobiological researcher. You're not upset? I'm impressed. It was actually brilliant diplomacy. You learned more about human psychology in 3 days than most species discover in years of formal contact. And now? What happens when you leave? The question hung in the air between us. I'd been dreading this conversation, knowing it was inevitable. The Terran Federation is establishing a permanent embassy here, I said carefully. They'll need an experienced ambassador who understands Drakmori culture. Are you volunteering for the position? If you think you can tolerate having me around, long-term, without the pet cage this time. Princess Kalitha's laugh was like music, bright and joyful. I believe I could manage that, though I may occasionally miss the simplicity of when you were just my fascinating pet Pip. Don't even think about it. Marcus, she said, turning to face me fully. There's something else. The Imperial Court has been impressed with your diplomatic skills. My father wishes to offer you a unique position. What kind of position? Cultural liaison and permanent advisor to the throne. It would mean citizenship in the Drakmori Empire, while maintaining your Terran diplomatic status. You would be the first dual citizen in either of our civilization's histories. I stared at her, processing the implications. That's unprecedented. Many things about our relationship have been unprecedented, she pointed out. The question is whether you're interested in continuing to make history. Looking at her, this incredible woman who had accidentally adopted me, protected me, studied me, and somehow become one of the most important people in my life. The answer was obvious. Your Highness, I said formally, I would be honored to accept. She smiled, her tattoos brightening with joy. Excellent. Though I should warn you, the position comes with some unusual requirements. Such as? Occasional state dinners, formal ceremonies, and she paused, her eyes twinkling with mischief. Periodic behavioral studies for scientific purposes, of course. As long as there are no more cages involved. No cages, she agreed. But I make no promises about the occasional caller. Princess, I'm joking, Marcus, mostly. As we stood there laughing together under the alien stars, I reflected on the strange turns life could take. I'd come to Zerion Prime as a simple diplomatic ambassador, and somehow ended up as a pet, a research subject, a friend, and now a permanent bridge between two civilizations. So, I said, what's our first order of business as galactic history makers? Dinner, Princess Kalitha replied promptly. I want to try this pizza your Admiral Sterling keeps talking about. I've had my chefs studying the concept. Pizza, I repeated, grinning. The foundation of all great diplomacy. Indeed, and afterward, perhaps you could teach me more about human courtship rituals. For diplomatic purposes, naturally. Naturally, I agreed, thinking that being lost in space had turned out to be the best thing that ever happened to me. Even if it had started with being someone's pet. The end,